All right, today we will be looking at Impact City Roller Derby. As you can see, we have the board laid out. If you hear background noises, there is a baby in the background. Please ignore that. When you lay out everything, make sure you take out the penalty box and make it separate from the rest of the cards. Shuffle those. Make sure each player has their 5 roller girl tokens, and each has 7 optional dots that can be used for various things, as well as 2 dots to represent which jam you are on and who will get lead jammer. So to begin, player 1 will start by placing one of their players. Green is player 1. Player 1 will take their jammer and place her on one of the pink squares for either jammer. Then the pink player will get to place one of her roller derby token girls as well.
Does it need to be the jammer?
It does not need to be the jammer. It can be any of your girls, including your pivot. All of the numbered roller girls need to be placed on the yellow. I will now place my pivot with the stripe on her helmet in one of the green spots. Pivots go in green. And we will alternate like this until all of our roller girl tokens are placed. Pink has chosen to take the inside of the track, green rather the middle of the track. It does not matter how you set these girls up as you are getting ready to go. First player, green, will go first. Make sure that you have your jammer movement marked. You won't be using that your first turn because you cannot move the jammer the first turn to simulate all of the girls getting off the line before she can go. The first phase, the only piece you may move is your pivot, and you may move her up to 3 spaces. So I'll go ahead and move mine, 1, 2, 3, and then I will mark her as having moved. Pink will do the same. And mark her pivot, move. Your pivot's over here. Alright. Then I may move up to 2 of my roller girls. So I will move number 1. 1, 2, 3. Be careful as you're picking up your roller girls. You can make a domino effect. And I will move number 2. 1, 2. I will only move her. I'll move her all 3. And mark both of them having moved. 1, 2. Continuing phase 2, pink will move 2 up to 2 of her roller girls. And I will finish up by moving my block with 3. 1, 2, 3. As you see, the optional tokens can be used to mark which players have moved. Alternatively, in the rule books, it states you could place them facing backwards in order to denote who has moved, but I find it easier to use the tokens. Being that this jammer, or this blocker is the last blocker, she must attempt to move 3. However, because her movement is blocked by her fellow roller girls, she does not have to move the full 3 spaces because she chose to move into a spot that does not have any openings, and that's perfectly acceptable. Once we've moved all of our pieces in this first turn, we go ahead and clear off our tokens and begin the second turn. In the second turn, you now may move your jammer, as well as you may block. You'll notice there were no blocks the first turn because blocks are not allowed until the second turn. So I will begin by moving one of my roller girls, number 1, 1, 2, 3, onto one of the card zones. She doesn't have any cards, so she can't use it yet. And I will mark her moved, and I will choose to only move one roller girl this phase 1 of my movement. Now pink has their turn. Pink chose to use roller girls 1 and 2. I will now begin by moving my pivot. My pivot gets the free pivot block this turn, so she will attempt to block number 2. You'll notice on the chart it does discuss your push results on both the back of the rule book as well as on the back of the quick start guide. So in order to do a block, I need to roll a 6-sided die, the green die, and pink will need to roll a 10-sided die, the orange die. I rolled a 6, which is relatively high. She rolled a 5. Consulting the chart, she rolled less than me, so in that case, it is a fail. Nothing happens, except I've used my pivots block, but she can now take her full movement. 1, 2, 3. So I've moved my pivot. Now I have to move 2 players this turn because I only moved 1 player in my first phase. I will move my jammer next. Begin to move your jammer. You may shift your movement dice, either up or down. Since I'm on stop, I can only go one direction. So 6, my jammer must now move at least 5, but can move up to 6. So I move her 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You'll notice she started here. So she made 1 lane change in, 2 lane changes in, 1 lane change out for a total of 3 lane changes. She can no longer make another lane change, so she's out of movement. So now she will choose to try to pour it on to get 1 free extra space of movement. So you roll her current die, and as long as you don't roll a 6, she will be safe. So I rolled a 2, which is successful, so she can move 1 more forward. Because my jammer has now crossed the jammer line, I go ahead and draw 3 cards. So 1, 2, and 3. Usually this would be done in secret, but so that you can see what I have drawn 2 arm whip cards, which are offensive cards, which means they'll give one of my players extra movement if I meet the criteria. The criteria for this card is, to use this card, you must have a standing teammate adjacent to the card zone. We'll see that in effect later. Got another arm whip. As well as I received an elbow smash. This is a foul card and can be played at any time. This will be very good when her jammer tries to go by. So I have now moved my 2 players. I mark my jammer moved. And that is the end of my part of phase 2 of this round of movement. Pink gets their movements on phase 2.
Could I have pushed during your turn, or is that only during my turn?
You can only push when you're active. If you had a card, you may play those if they're allowed during your opponent's turn. moved her jammer. Pink moved their jammer. The inside lane for all of her movement, and moved their pivot as well. I may still move my blocker 2 and blocker 3. Blocker 2 that will attempt, oh, notice her jammer just passed the jammer line, so she needed to make sure she drew her 3 cards. For illustrative purposes, her 3 cards are more defensive and 1 offensive. So the first defensive card she got was a hard block. So anytime she has a player who ends her movement in one of these card zones and is adjacent to one of my players, she could play this card. She would roll a d12, 5+ is a miss, otherwise she would make my skater have to do a wipeout roll. She got 2 of those hard blocks. Her team's apparently out for blood today, as well as 1 speed boost. This is an excellent offensive card that gives you 1 movement, extra movement, and there are no requirements on this card. Notice no cards were able to be played because we hadn't acquired them until after our jammers passed. Now, it's the beginning of my turn. Number 2 is not moved yet, so she's going to start by trying a blocker push on the jammer. So I will need to roll my d6. Pink will need to roll the d10. We both rolled a 1. That is a particularly bad result. So consulting the chart, on a 1 and 1 on the push result, it is an epic wipeout. Both pushing and opposing roller girls are winded. Normally down, they could get up next turn and continue moving. However, both of our girls are now winded, and all they can do next turn is stand up. This is a very bad turn of events for the pink team. So I have now moved blocker 2. She cannot move anymore because she did suffer a wipeout result and may not stand up. So blocker 3 now moves. 1, 2, 3, coming on to the inside lane. And that would complete all of my movements for this phase. Her number 3 blocker had to move her full 3 movement because she was the last blocker on the board. All right, so our turn 2 is completely finished. So we move all of our markers. All right, so I will begin by moving my pivot. 1, 2. Notice I will only move her 2 this turn, and then I will move my jammer. By moving my jammer, I will shift up to the D8. So now my jammer may move 7 or 8. She's coming out of the red. If she were on a D10 or D12, would have to make an exiting the curve roll. However, because she's on the D8, she may leave it safely. 1, 2, 3, 4. At this point, I land on a card zone. I have one of my players adjacent to that card zone, so I may play Arm Whip. This will give me an additional 1 movement for this, and I must now discard the card. I have also used a card during my phase 1 and may not use another card during this entire phase. So I've moved 4. I get a free movement for 5, and I still have 4 remaining. So 5, 6, 7, 8. Her jammer is down, but I'm going to press my luck and try to make my jammer move 1 extra space with another pour it on. As long as I don't roll an 8, she will be successful. A 7, a near miss. So she barely gets that extra movement out of her skates. I have now moved my pivot and my jammer. Make sure you mark your chairs, not your opponent's chairs. And my phase 1 is done. I have now cleared the entire team. I have now made the initial pass, and my jammer is now declared the lead jammer and can call off the jam whenever she wants.
If my jammer was not winded, would you be able to call the jammer yet before I took my first phase?
Both players would have the opportunity in phase 1 to move their players. This was able to be called earlier than usual, as Pink has pointed out, because her jammer is down and there is no way she can catch up to my jammer. Had my jammer, however, fallen over, been down or winded due to her pouring it on, it would have not had a lead jammer yet, because in order to attain lead jammer, you must be ahead of everybody else, and you must still be standing, and it is declared at the end of a phase. So officially, I'm not lead jammer until after this phase ends.
This would be an opportunity to use hard block.
Yes. She's chosen to use hard block to hit my pivot. I guess she's just feeling vindictive. So at this point, she rolls a D12, which is the yellow die. She rolled a 2, so it is successful. On a 5+, it would have been a miss. Now I must make a wipeout roll. For the wipeout roll, I roll a D6 with a modifier of 2 and add 2. So I rolled a 5. Consulting the wipeout chart, 5 plus 2 is a 7. That is a face plant. The roller girl falls flat on her face and is down. So my pivot will not be able to do much. Next turn. And that card is then discarded. So she's moved. Pink has moved. Blockers 1 and 2. It is now officially the end of phase 1, and this is when I would be declared lead jammer, and you would move it. We are now past the initial pass and waiting to get into the first scoring pass.